So if you've seen my review of the Mavic Mini, you'll know that I love almost everything about this drone. The Mavic Mini brings together the best features of the entire Mavic line with its foldable arms and compact size, along with some upgrades from the Spark with a 3-axis gimbal that shoots 2.7K video, instead of a 2-axis gimbal that shoots 1080p. In fact, there's so many features on the Mavic Mini that there's only a few notable omissions, like the front vision sensors for obstacle avoidance, and the smart flight modes that we've known to love from the other Mavics. And although these would be nice to have, the absence of them barely affects the user experience, and for the price, it's absolutely insane. But there was one missing feature that bothered me more than any of the others, and that was the lack of manual video. I talk about it a little bit in my review, but at the same time for the price, it's hard to justify complaining about it. And although I knew that there wasn't manual video when I was going into this drone, and I never expected it to be added, it's completely changed the game now that it has been added, with version 1.00.500. Yeah. Before the update, I found myself being disappointed with about 10% of the footage I shot because of extremely high or extremely slow shutter speeds. It's something that, for me, where I'm used to shooting with a cinema camera with full manual controls, in fact no auto whatsoever, actually bugged me for a lot of the footage that I was shooting with the drone. But of course, the Mavic Mini is not supposed to be a complete videography tool, it's supposed to be a travel camera that you can take anywhere with you. But after this new update, it has become a videography tool. So how can you make the most of this new update? Well, here's how I've been able to get so much more out of this drone, from the most basic of settings that you just need to set and leave, to more advanced ones that I've learned not only with this drone but with other cameras. There's a whole lot of stuff that you need to learn for this drone if you're going to start flying it with manual video, but luckily DJI have really implemented this well, and once you get your head around what settings you need to use, it's pretty damn easy to just go out and fly as you would before this update. But before we get into any of that, if you're a new drone pilot, an existing videographer, a photographer, or in fact anything in between, what better way to showcase your work than with a bespoke built website from Zyro, today's sponsor. Creating a site with Zyro is as easy as drag and drop, you don't need to bother with coding anything. With dozens of bespoke templates to choose from, getting started is easy, and they're fully customizable, so your site can be uniquely yours. Building a site with Zyro is as simple as dragging and dropping elements onto your page, like your favourite photos, drone shots, or anything that you've created. And with their smart AI features like the prediction heat map, text recommendations and logo creators, Zyro helps you every step along the way to get your work out there. And best of all, you can get your site up and running within just an hour of creating your account. And I don't think I see anyone else making things that simple. Zyro takes the difficulty out of site building and puts the creative customization right at your fingertips. Perfect for a professional looking drone portfolio, Zyro can be the launchpad you need to get your work out there. Sign up now at the link in the description and use the code TECHFOCUS for 30% off any of their paid plans. So a general rule of thumb when shooting any kind of video is to use a shutter speed that is double your frame rate, also known as the 180 degrees rule. So for example, I'm shooting at 24 frames per second, and with a shutter speed of a 48th of a second, that is what creates the natural motion blur that most people consider to be cinematic. A higher shutter speed often creates jumpy looking footage that will honestly look more like a smartphone video than anything that's shot on a decent camera. But on the other end, a shutter speed set too low, for example one that is a 24th of a second at 24 frames per second, can create mushy looking footage, and it takes away from the main subject of the shot. This is common with low light capture from the Mavic Mini, which is why I barely included any low light footage within my review. Take this shot for example, this was shot well before the manual video came into play, but you can tell that the shutter speed is equal to the frame rate because of the way that not only the compression ruins the motion blur, but the motion blur is there and it's really strong. So if you're heading out to fly, setting the shutter speed in line with this rule will elevate your footage to a true cinematic level. But there's a problem here. If you're shooting in daylight, the lowest ISO setting is 100, so achieving the 180 degree rule is near impossible. Usually with a normal camera or a drone like the Mavic 2 Pro, you can stop the aperture down to reduce the amount of light that hits the sensor, which means you can achieve the right shutter speed and ISO and have that awesome looking footage. But you can't do that with the Mavic Mini because the aperture is fixed at 2.8, so there's only really one option available to you. You'll need a set of ND filters, like these that I've been sent by Freewell Gear. ND filters reduce the amount of light that goes through the lens and to the sensor, meaning it'll be easy to achieve the buttery looking footage, so you won't have to compromise the motion in order to get the correct exposure. Without an ND filter, daylight shots will look like this if we follow the shutter speed rule. But to expose it correctly, it'll be way too choppy. But with the ND filter installed, the footage with the shutter speed rule looks like this. It's a subtle difference and not everyone will notice, but one of the Mavic 2 Pro's exceptional features is its ability to stop the aperture down all the way to f16, which will allow you to shoot in basically any conditions without adding an ND filter on top. So if you want to get the most out of this drone and have your shutter speed perfectly match footage shot in different lighting or by a different camera, that's how easy it is, and the benefits are exponentially greater than the cost of the ND filters. One of the more simple settings to play with that has sort of always been on the drone, but is something that I barely ever took a notice of because it's kind of hidden in the menus, is the white balance setting. Left in auto mode, camera moves can change the color temperature chosen by the drone. Even a simple pan can change the temperature mid-shot, which is something you should really try and avoid. By just flicking it to manual control and then choosing a temperature that looks right to you, a shot can be elevated to a whole new level where the viewer's focus is on the subject of the shot and not the color changes. Because I only use the Mavic Mini in daylight, I tend to leave the white balance at 5600 Kelvin, which is something that a little bit of color grading can correct if it is set wrong. It's just a lot nicer to have it in manual mode, so you know those color temperatures won't be changing mid-shot, because correcting that in post is a very hard thing to do. This new update also added 24 frames per second shooting capabilities, which is something that a lot of people wanted. But personally, I won't be using it, and I don't think you should either. You see, 24 frames per second is awesome, and you'd think I'd be using it considering I shoot everything at 24 on every camera, but the minimum shutter speed available is a 50th of a second. So every second or two there'll be a minor jitter, as 50 doesn't divide by 24. Now it's only a minor thing and it may not appear at all, but for me I prefer to shoot at 30 frames a second and play back at 80% speed, which then makes it 24. That way, not only does the speed match perfectly with the shutter speed, but it also creates a hyper-realistic look similar to that of music videos, which is something Tom Scott really explains quite well in a video of his that I'll link down below. And honestly, this isn't a bad practice either. DJI's slow motion codecs for this drone aren't great, so making full use of DJI's highest available resolution and slowest flight modes can look great if you're going for that kind of look. Now obviously that's subjective, but in my experience it's been something that I've preferred the results from. Now don't get me wrong, 24 frames per second is a nice option to have, particularly when the subject of a shot needs to be shown in real-time speed. At the end of the day, the added choice is great, and it's up to you which one you use. But you see, that's the best part of this new update. It lets you choose. You're not relying on the white balance to stay the same. You don't have to move the camera, set the exposure lock, and then shoot your shot. You can do it yourself and get it right the first time. It's gone from acceptably good video, but not outstanding, to actually outstanding video for its price and size, particularly if you have some ND filters on hand. After everything that they've added to this drone, all that remains is knowing the best shooting methods. Thanks to this new update, the possibilities of shooting video with this drone are just incredible. It's become the videography tool for everyone, so if you are thinking of buying one, then now more than ever is the time to do it.